So a couple weeks ago, I woke up and the back of my phone was busted out from people hacking it, and it had overheated the battery. My neighbors had lost their $10 internet, and so I don't know, 5, 6, 20 people have been trying to use my phone for the internet through some sort of technology that they had. It killed my phone. It killed 2 subsequent SIM cards, and I gave up on having mobile service in my home. So I live 2 blocks away from the community center in my apartment complex where there is free Wi-Fi, which is incredibly fast. And so I'm not really limited to the 3 minutes anymore because it took me like 45 minutes to load a 3-minute video, even though I had high-speed cell service because of all the people who were hacking my phone and all of the technology. But this makes a good analogy of when you practice and you accumulate, you gain power to do things. Like if you accumulate technology, you have the power to do things. And you still have to apply that there is a consequence to killing, there is a consequence to stealing, there is a consequence to immoral interaction between the genders. There is consequence to promoting falsehoods. There's a consequence to being divisive. All of these things have consequences. There's a consequence to being out of uniform. There's a consequence to being above your station. And you can actualize all of these faults, all of these problems through your access to technology, through your access to heightened salience, to your access to magic. All of these things can cause you to have the consequences of doing things. They are amplified. Now, a lot of people live in such a mess that, what does it matter if I got mud on my forehead, I got mud on my nose, I got mud on my shoulders? Hey, you need anything done in the mud, talk to me, because I'm down here in the mud, I do that. And then the consequence of doing other muddy things for other people is that, you got a nice sandwich in the mud, and you're used to it being gritty, and somebody else, you can call on favors. Well, that's also taking what's not given, because they said, well, I'm not gonna, I could, sure, your hourly rate down there would have been this much, but what would this money do you down there? It'll be there for you when you need it. Just call on me for a favor. So when you go for their favor and they don't give it to you, that's also taking what's not given. And so you can go after them, and then they got the consequences, and then maybe you can make something muddy for them. And you go through these stages with them. So you don't want them to say, oh my God, this person is so scary, I know I owe them money, but I can't give it to them now because I'll be killed, it'll be so terrible, some bad things will happen. Now you take the terms bad things that can happen, and you exaggerate on that, right? There's a penalty for exaggeration because exaggeration is falsehood, exaggeration is lying. And you can say that there's all of samsara is an exaggeration and lying, right? There's a penalty for being in existence too, because you're ignorant, you exist, and therefore you are penalized. So I do things like this all day long. This is where I'm thinking about, because I was raised by somebody who never intended to have relationships with the other gender, relationships with the next generation, except through males. And, the interaction with regular women just didn't exist. When I did interact with other women, of course, they didn't see me as the kind of women that they would put their effort into they wouldn't risk telling the lie that I was suitable for anything in their franchise. So, but interestingly enough, they would tell lies about other things that I was not suitable for. And so you got to deal with people's obscurations every day. So if you want to do stream of consciousness kind of stuff, you need to have accumulations. The accumulations can wear out. You can also hit a flow stop. Like something happens that you hit a flow stop. You trespass on somebody, for example. They take notice, and they take things out of your awareness. They put things into your awareness. I wanted to talk about Milarepa. When he died, the Bonn school that he had studied in had been saying, you have a teaching obligation, you have a teaching obligation, you have a teaching obligation, you need to come back. And he said, I refuse. I've renounced the world. I've done all this stuff. I don't believe in doing that anymore because, you want me to teach how I killed those people at the wedding and all that sort of stuff, and I'm not going to do that. So they said, well, but you owe us. You can't take what's not given. So they came back for what was owed to them. They probably took more than was owed for them. But what they did was they killed him by perforating his stomach with little bones that had been twisted, so that when he ate some food, they got in his stomach and expanded, and they perforated his stomach and he died. And the reason why they did that is because they subsequently ate him. And so that is in my lineage. And as a result, ever since that time, he stayed alive within us and prevented a lot of different things. And we have to negotiate everything we do with a Buddhist. So that has become the nature of our school. And so that is an interesting thing. But I believe this is the first time that that's been passed to a woman. Since then, it was a woman who killed him, but we don't know if she got in on the feast. So that means in the women, he's not as effective because he's not my relative. I don't have to listen to him. He doesn't have so much. It's an argument. Whereas in a man, the negotiations could go in a different way. So that is always a thing. So we always are negotiating with that sort of stuff. He has the things he can do, and I mean, I could marry him or something like that, but then he's like, well, if I was going to marry somebody, I would have killed somebody. And so that's the kind of thing. And that gets us into the topic of when you take vows when you're not authorized to do so, if you in honesty do not have family that you are obligated to, if they have released you, if they have brought you there themselves and dropped you off, your monastic potential to be successful is much higher. If you have other obligations, if you were generated through a stolen surrogacy, and you think that you can be, and then you subsequently steal instruction, you follow a line in which the instruction wasn't authorized, and then you don't have any guidance to understand that, you could be called out of that. Now, whether or not your vows are supported, you're still being penalized for having taken the vows that you took. When you break those vows, you become a vow breaker, and there are penalties for that. Those penalties, one of the manifestations that they're enforced through is the Dharmapalas, which start out as obstructors. They are obstructors that interfere with your thoughts, that interfere with what's around you in your environment, interfere with other people's thoughts about you, and eventually you begin to address them. Powerful people show compassion towards them, start to understand that something is owed. Let's look at this. It's a dharma. It's almost like math. It's almost like chemistry. It's almost like physics. And but it's so complex that our minds don't have the capacity to fully understand it. All of these sciences I just rattled off are just analogies, something that we can get an understanding of. Look at how complex this is. So you got to have faith in it. You got to understand that. Bring your consciousness back. Pay attention to the nails you've been given by your generous guru, and stay in the mistakes that correspond to your environment. And that doesn't mean stay in your place, Negro, stay in your place, you uppity little snot. It means, although we might say that, it means that your circumstances exist for a reason and they can be very useful, but the idea that you can't get there from here is just something that you say to blow people off when they haven't paid you, your inheritance, and now they want you to save their nation. And I'm just saying, you've got other problems first.